Asquequasan Natasuis Makasni Pashau at Narragansett Niantic Niantic Canupiam Natasuis Loren Spears at English at. Indigenous means a people of a certain place, the original people of that place. So as being Narragansett, I'm indigenous to what we now call Rhode Island. This is our original homeland.
Remaining closely tied to my traditional culture is something that's become so important to me. When people look at me, they don't instantly think, oh, you're Native American, because I don't look like Pocahontas. I think that it's important that people from outside of our communities that are right here in Rhode Island understand and know what the Narragansett people are and what they're about.
The town of Narragansett was named after the people. Historically, the name means the people of the small points. And you have to think of the coastline, and there's lots of rocks and things, and that's connected to who we are. Even though that town is named after us, our territory was all over what we consider most of Rhode Island.
When the city of Providence was first laid out, when the Narragansett sachems gave this land to Roger Williams to establish the city, the southwest boundary was where the Indian town of Mashapaug was. And the reason for that was our people always lived near the bodies of water and the rivers and streams, because back then you didn't buy your water. You got it from the natural supplies that the Creator put here.
I feel a connectedness to Mashapaug Pond because I know my ancestors walked all of this land.
Well, how did the Narragansett travel and get from one place to another so quickly? Well, we used the waterways. And we have to remember that the waterways were not dammed. So our water vessels, our canoes, our mashoons, we could go from one end of the state to the other very quickly. As a young person, I can remember my family speaking of the pond, and in all of our families, you can look from one family to another family. One family might still be going out crabbing and quahogging and clamming, oystering. That might be a part of their tradition. Others are going out and gathering medicines. And that's why the waterways are so important, to keep them clean.
When I was in middle school, you really would touch on Native American culture for maybe like a quarter.
What gets in the textbooks, it keeps us in the past tense. It's usually just some little tiny blip in history, if you're lucky, if you're even mentioned as a tribal community. And it's often the viewpoint only of the victor.
After the city was founded, some of the residents became uncomfortable with the idea of having an Indian village so close to the city. I grew up in segregated housing not too far from here. It was the Roger Williams housing project, at least part of my growing up period. The reason I didn't think of it in any negative way is it was wonderful. We were 2 buildings out of all the buildings in the projects. There were only 2 buildings that people of color were allowed to live in. It was like a village, those 2 buildings. And we enjoyed ourselves, had all kinds of things, but it was segregated housing. That's why I refer to the sanitized history and the unsanitized history.
For other people outside of our tribal community, there's no source of information other than the media to portray what Indians are.
You hear me? You speak English, don't you?
I teach real young kids to be critical. I said, the next time you watch a movie and they show some Indians in the movie, what are they doing and does it make any sense as just being a human being? Like, for example, in a movie, the woman, she's always half dressed. It's a blizzard outside, but she's got her shawl just kind of like hanging off of her. It doesn't make any sense. No one in their right mind in a blizzard is half dressed. You know, then there's the stoic Indian that's crying over the environment. You know, it's perpetuating those stereotypes. It's not that we don't care about the environment, of course we do, but it's the myths that they put out there that you're only sort of a good Indian if you're up there crying about it. Mind you, that commercial, it's an Italian guy that's an actor. So a lot of times also in the media, we can't look like they want us to look like because they're not even Indian people that are representing us.
And so people would tell me things like, oh, do you live in a teepee? Like, no, I live in a regular house. I'm just like you guys. This is just my culture, and this is another aspect of my life that a lot of people didn't understand at first.
We're living in the 21st century, and some of the things we like have nothing to do with our ancestral history, but have to do with our today. And so even though I'm a finger weaver and a basket maker and a bead worker, my sons and kids have learned all those things, but one of my sons, he's been painting skateboards with indigenous imagery, but it's on something fun and contemporary.
I did a project on our traditional dance, and we have tons of forms of traditional dance. I love fancy shawl dancing. That's one of my passions. And so what I would do is, instead of listening to the same traditional music every day over and over, I started fancy shawl dancing to new songs like Beyonce's Countdown. And so I took modern music and I incorporated it into our traditional dance to make something brand new.
That's why our traditions and culture are so important to us. Someone asked the question earlier, why is our culture so important? It's who we are, you know? These are the traditions that have been passed down from our ancestors that were sacred, and the line of communication, that chain, has been broken by the interference of the people who came and tried to dismantle all the freedoms we enjoyed. America always was the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I tell my children and grandchildren, question everything, because there's always more to find out. A closed mind is like a block of wood. So you have to keep your mind open.